Hey everyone, welcome to Amplify Digest. I'm your host, Lars Schmidt, and I'll be breaking down some of the top news, trends, and resources and all things people in 5 minutes or less. As always, all the articles I'm going to walk you through and more, the links can be found on the Amplify blog. So I want to open up with this article from LinkedIn, and this feels pretty significant. For the first time on LinkedIn, applications for remote jobs were actually higher than applications for on-prem jobs. And this is particularly significant as remote jobs reflect 20% of the overall job listings on LinkedIn. So again, if we're having any uncertainty around what candidates are looking for as it relates to having flexibility or having to go to an office, yet another data point reinforcing the need for flexibility and remote and hybrid constructs as a preference for employees. This feature, actually an interview with George Laroque in HR Brew around how the infusion of venture capital in the HR tech space is going to be fundamentally changing HR. And when you think about this, you can kind of use the chicken and the egg analogy. The way that we work is very different today than it was 2 years ago. And this is going to be the case moving forward. We're going to need new technology to support the new ways that we're working. And so part of the shift and infusion of venture capital is a recognition that this is a new world of work that we're building, and it will require new tools to help us do that. There's a great Microsoft report earlier this year that had a line in it called New Worlds Need New Maps. And I think that that is certainly applicable as we think about how the HR and work tech space is going to be supporting this new world of work. This is another great piece from HBR on a blueprint, essentially a roadmap on how to build an anti-racist company. There's a lot of really good takeaways in this, and just some points that we need to be thinking about as we're proactively designing. And I think, the theme of what we're experiencing right now in HR is designing this new world of work. And we've got to be much more mindful around how we're thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, access as we're doing that. And so this piece by HBR gives some really good prompts, I think, on things that we need to be thinking about as we're designing. And here's another really thought-provoking piece in Vox. Obviously, I talk a lot about hybrid and remote work, as many of us do, but we have to be mindful that designation and capability is limited to a particular subset of the overall working population. And this story by Vox gets into some of the challenges for hourly and workers who don't have the ability to work remote and hybrid, and how they've seen some increases in wages over the pandemic, but in some cases they haven't. And I think that it's this not insignificant portion of the workforce that we're not often talking about and factoring in when we're having some of these future of work conversations. And so it gets into from inflation and so much more. So here's another piece that I definitely recommend you reading and kind of making sure that we're thinking about the broader population of employees and workers as we're having these conversations around the new world of work. And again, gets into some of the details in that story that we really need to be thinking about as it relates to wage growth, inflation, and more. And I want to close with this kind of thought-provoking piece from Atlassian's head of remote. As the piece gets into some of the kind of generational shifts and how this generation who's coming into the workforce now and has really been working primarily hybrid and remote as they move into leadership roles, the conversation around a forced return to the workplace is going to be pretty foreign to them. And so, we'll see. Obviously, this is a very bullish take on work from anywhere, which is Atlassian's approach to hybrid work. I think the next couple of years we'll begin to actually be able to witness and see how this all plays out over time. But the one thing that is certain is that the world of work of February of 2020 is no more. How this plays out over time, obviously time will tell, but it's a fascinating piece, and I appreciate the optimism in this piece around how people will be thinking about work in the future. That's a wrap for this week. We'll be back next week with more news and resources. And again, you can see the links to all these articles in the show notes on the Amplify Talent blog. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next week.